When God is about to give you something big, he rarely announces it with clarity. Instead, he begins with subtle signs, whispers in the soul, rearrangements in your routine, and a quiet stirring that feels both unsettling and sacred. You may not recognize it at first. It might feel like discomfort, like something is off, like the things that used to satisfy you now feel hollow. But that emptiness is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the clearing of space for something weightier, something eternal. C.S. Lewis once wrote that, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. And when heaven is preparing to deliver something significant, pain often precedes the promise. You'll begin to notice a divine discontent. Not the kind that leads to bitterness, but the kind that makes you restless for more. You'll feel a holy dissatisfaction with surface-level living. The conversations that once entertained you now feel shallow. The goals that once drove you now seem small. It's as if your spirit is being stretched to hold something larger than your current capacity. This is not ambition, it's awakening. God is enlarging your soul to receive what your mind cannot yet comprehend. There will be pruning. Things will fall away. People will exit. Opportunities will dry up. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being positioned. Lewis reminds us that he who has God and everything else has no more than he who has God only. So God begins to strip away what you thought you needed, so you can receive what he knows you're ready for. It's uncomfortable, it's confusing, but it's holy, because the weight of what's coming cannot be carried by cluttered hands or divided hearts. You'll crave silence. Not just quiet, but solitude. You'll begin to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of focus. You'll feel drawn to prayer, to reflection, to spaces where the noise of the world fades and the whisper of God grows louder. This is not isolation, it's incubation. God is forming something in you that requires stillness. Lewis believed that the soul was made to enjoy eternal realities, and in these moments of solitude, your soul begins to tune itself to heaven's frequency. You'll feel a strange peace, not because your circumstances make sense, but because your spirit knows something is shifting. It's the kind of peace that surpasses understanding, the kind that anchors you when logic fails. It's not passive, it's prophetic. It's the quiet confidence that something is coming even if you can't name it. And in that peace, you'll find strength, not the strength to fight, but the strength to wait, to trust, to obey. Then comes the burden, a vision, a calling, a weight that feels too heavy for your current self. That's the final sign. God doesn't give small assignments to stretched souls. He gives divine burdens that require divine help. You'll feel overwhelmed, but not crushed, because what's coming is not just big, it's holy, and you've been prepared for it in ways only heaven understands. When God is about to give you something big, the first sign is often a holy disruption. It doesn't come with clarity or comfort. It comes with confusion. You begin to feel unsettled in places that once felt safe. The rhythm of your life starts to shift. Routines lose their flavor. Relationships feel strained. Opportunities that once excited you now feel hollow. This isn't random. It's divine. It's the Spirit of God rearranging your internal furniture to make room for something weightier. And while the world might call it instability, heaven calls it preparation. C.S. Lewis once said, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. That pain isn't always physical, it's spiritual. It's the H of transition, the discomfort of being stretched, the tension of being pulled out of what's familiar into what's faithful. When God is preparing to entrust you with something big, He doesn't just upgrade your circumstances, He upgrades your character. And character is forged in disruption. Think of Moses. Before he could lead a nation, he had to leave a palace. His life was disrupted by a burning bush, a divine encounter that shattered his comfort and summoned his calling. Or Joseph, whose journey to leadership began with betrayal, slavery, and prison. These weren't setbacks. They were setups. Divine disruptions that stripped away the old to make room for the new. Because what God gives is never light. It's loaded with purpose. And only a refined vessel can carry it. Disruption is also diagnostic. It reveals what you've been leaning on. When God shakes your life, it's not to destroy you, it's to expose what can't go with you. You start to see which habits, mindsets, and attachments are incompatible with your next season. You begin to crave solitude, silence, and spiritual clarity. You lose the appetite for noise. You stop chasing validation. You start listening for whispers. That's not regression, it's refinement. Proverbs 16:9 says, "We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps." Divine disruption is God's way of rerouting your steps toward destiny. It's not a detour, it's a doorway. And while it may feel like everything is falling apart, it's actually falling into place. Because heaven doesn't build on comfort, it builds on consecration. And consecration begins with disruption. This kind of shift will confuse people. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're distracted. But they don't see the altar you're building. They don't hear the voice you're following. They don't know that your discomfort is sacred, that your silence is strategic, that your disruption is divine. Because when God is about to give you something big, He doesn't just prepare the gift, He prepares the giver. And that preparation begins with a holy, necessary, soul-shaking disruption. Before God gives you something big, He often strips you of what you thought you needed. It's not cruelty, it's calibration. In the spiritual economy, subtraction often precedes multiplication. You begin to lose things that once felt essential: relationships, routines, roles, even parts of your identity. It feels like erosion, but it's actually excavation. God is digging out the false foundations so He can build something eternal. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "He who has God and everything else has no more than he who has God only." That line isn't poetic, it's prophetic. It reminds us that divine gifts require empty hands and uncluttered hearts. This stripping is sacred. It's not random loss, it's intentional refinement. You may feel like your life is unraveling, but heaven is actually tailoring it. God removes what cannot carry the weight of your next season. He doesn't just prepare the blessing, He prepares the vessel, and preparation often looks like pruning. In John 15:2, Jesus says, "Every branch that bears fruit, He prunes so that it may bear more fruit." That pruning hurts, it confuses, but it's holy, because what's coming is too heavy for shallow roots. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable, uncertain. The things that once gave you confidence, titles, talents, networks, begin to fade. You're left with silence and surrender. But that's where transformation begins. Lewis believed that suffering was not the absence of God's love, but the presence of His craftsmanship. In his own words, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. That pain is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the sound of heaven rearranging your soul. This stripping also reveals your attachments. You begin to see what you've been leaning on instead of God. Comfort becomes a mirror, loss becomes a teacher. And in that mirror, you realize that some of the things you called blessings were actually distractions. God doesn't just remove what's bad, He removes what's unnecessary. Because divine elevation requires divine elimination. Think of Job. Before he received double, he lost everything. His wealth, his health, his reputation. But in that stripping, he gained something deeper, a revelation of God's character. Or Joseph, who was stripped of his coat, his freedom, and his status, only to be clothed in authority later. These weren't setbacks, they were setups. Because what God gives is not just big, it's holy. And holiness requires humility. So when you feel like everything is being taken, remember, it's not subtraction, it's sanctification. God is not punishing you. He's positioning you. He's making sure that when the blessing arrives, it doesn't break you. That when the door opens, you're not dragging baggage. That when the platform is given, your soul is anchored. Because divine gifts require divine readiness. And readiness begins with release. You're not losing. You're being lightened. You're not being emptied. You're being entrusted. And that trust begins when God strips away what you thought you needed so he can give you what you were truly made for. Before God gives you something big, he often draws you into silence and solitude, not to isolate you, but to initiate you. It's a sacred withdrawal, a divine invitation to step away from noise, distraction, and performance. You begin to crave quiet, not because you're tired of people, but because your spirit is tuning itself to a frequency only heaven broadcasts. This isn't avoidance. It's alignment. C.S. Lewis Lutz wrote, The soul was made to enjoy some eternal reality, and silence is the doorway to that reality. When God is preparing you for something weighty, he doesn't just speak louder, he speaks deeper. And depth requires stillness. You start to feel uncomfortable in crowded spaces. Conversations that once energized you now feel draining. You begin to withdraw, not out of bitterness, but out of hunger. Hunger for clarity. Hunger for truth. Hunger for God. This is the spiritual discipline of solitude, the kind Jesus practiced often. He withdrew to lonely places, not because he was weak, but because he was wise. He knew that intimacy with the Father required intentional absence from everything else. In solitude, your soul begins to settle. Like silt in a stirred lake, the confusion, anxiety, and noise of your heart slowly sink. You begin to hear the whisper beneath the whirlwind. You begin to recognize God's voice. Not in the thunder, but in the still small moment. Lewis believed that silence was not emptiness, but fullness waiting to be heard. In his own words, God is the only comfort. He is the only one who can fill the vacuum. And that vacuum is often created by solitude. This craving for silence is also a sign of spiritual maturity. It means you're no longer satisfied with surface-level answers. You want revelation, not reaction. You want presence, not performance. You want God, not just his gifts. And in that quiet, he begins to reveal things that noise would have drowned out. He shows you your fears, your attachments, your idols. He doesn't shame you. He sanctifies you. Because what's coming requires purity, not popularity. Solitude also prepares you for clarity. Without it, your decisions are reactive. With it, your discernment sharpens. You begin to see what's truly important. You begin to recognize divine patterns. You begin to understand that not every opportunity is God's, and not every voice deserves your attention. Silence becomes your strategy. Stillness becomes your strength. This season will confuse others. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant. But they don't understand that you're not withdrawing. You're being drawn. Drawn into a deeper place, a higher calling, a quieter strength. Because when God is about to give you something big, he doesn't just prepare the gift, he prepares the receiver. And that preparation begins in silence, in solitude, in the sacred space where heaven speaks and the soul listens. You're not hiding, you're hearing. You're not avoiding, you're aligning. You're not alone, you're being anointed. Before God gives you something big, one of the clearest signs is the arrival of a peace that doesn't make sense. Not the kind of peace that comes from resolution, but the kind that shows up in the middle of uncertainty. It's quiet, unshakable, and strangely out of place. You're still waiting. You're still unsure. You're still walking through fog. And yet, your spirit is calm. That's not natural. It's supernatural. It's the peace that Scripture calls surpassing all understanding. So Philippians 4:7. It's not earned. It's entrusted. And it often precedes divine elevation. C.S. Lewis understood this paradox deeply. He wrote, God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from himself, because it is not there. There is no such thing. That kind of peace isn't circumstantial. It's relational. It's the result of proximity to God, not the absence of problems. When God is about to give you something big, He doesn't just prepare your surroundings, He prepares your soul. And peace is the evidence that your soul is anchored, even when your life is still shifting. This peace is prophetic. It's a signal that heaven is near. You may not have the details, but you have the assurance. You may not know the timing, but you trust the author. It's the kind of peace that makes you stop striving. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing clarity. You start resting in mystery. Because you know that what's coming is not just big, it's holy. And holiness requires stillness. Think of Jesus in the boat during the storm. The disciples were panicking, but He was sleeping. Not because He didn't care, but because He was carrying peace. That peace wasn't passive. It was powerful. It had authority. When He finally spoke, the storm obeyed. That's the kind of peace God gives before a breakthrough. It's not just comfort, it's command. It's the kind of peace that silences fear and steadies your steps. This peace also protects you. It guards your heart and mind from anxiety, distraction, and manipulation. It becomes a filter. You stop reacting to every voice. You stop entertaining every option. You start moving with precision. Because peace is not just a feeling, it's a strategy. It's how heaven shields you while preparing you. It's how God keeps you focused while the enemy tries to confuse you. Others may not understand it. They'll ask why you're so calm, why you're not rushing, why you're not panicking. But they don't hear the whisper you've heard. They don't feel the presence you've felt. They don't know that your peace is not ignorance. It's intimacy. You're not detached. You're deeply connected. And that connection is what makes you untouchable. So when peace shows up in the middle of your waiting, don't dismiss it. Don't question it. Receive it. Because it's not just comfort. It's confirmation. It's heaven's way of saying, I'm near. I'm working. I'm about to move. And when God moves, peace always goes first. It's the herald of something holy. The quiet before the glory. The stillness before the shift. Before God gives you something big, He often places a burden on your heart that feels far too heavy for your current strength. It's not punishment, it's prophecy. This burden isn't random, it's sacred. It's the weight of a calling, the ache of a divine assignment, the pull towards something you didn't choose but can't ignore. C.S. Lewis once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." And this burden is the first whisper of that destiny. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. But it's holy. Because before the blessing comes, God tests your shoulders. This burden may come as a deep concern for a broken world, a restless longing to speak truth, or a quiet fire to build something that doesn't yet exist. It's not ambition. It's alignment. You feel it in your bones. You carry it in your prayers. You wake up thinking about it and go to sleep wrestling with it. It's not something you can shake. That's how you know it's divine. Nehemiah felt it when he heard about the broken walls of Jerusalem. Though he was just a cupbearer, the burden made him weep, fast, and pray. That burden became the blueprint for restoration. Biblically, burdens are often the first sign of divine partnership. The Hebrew word masah means a weight, often used to describe prophetic messages or spiritual responsibility. God doesn't give burdens to break you. He gives them to build you. Moses felt it when he saw the suffering of his people. Jeremiah felt it when he tried to stay silent, but the word of the Lord burned in his bones. These burdens weren't optional. They were invitations. Invitations to step into something bigger than comfort, reputation, or control. This burden will stretch you. It will expose your limits. It will make you question your readiness. But that's the point. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And the burden is part of that qualification. It humbles you. It sanctifies you. It forces you to rely on grace, not gifting, on prayer, not planning, on surrender, not strategy. Because what's coming is not just big, it's sacred. And sacred things require sacred preparation. You'll feel overwhelmed. You'll want to run. You'll wonder why God chose you. But in that tension, you'll also feel a strange peace, a quiet knowing that this burden is not yours to carry alone. Matthew 11:28 reminds us, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That rest doesn't remove the burden, it redeems it. It transforms it from pressure into purpose. So when the burden shows up, don't dismiss it. Don't fear it. Embrace it. Because it's not just a sign, it's a seed of something eternal, something transformative, something that will require all of you, but will reveal the best of you. God doesn't give burdens without blessings. And the bigger the burden, the greater the glory that follows. When God is about to give you something big, He doesn't just deliver a blessing, He initiates a transformation. The signs are subtle, sacred, and often misunderstood. You'll feel disrupted, stripped, silenced, burdened, and yet peaceful. It's a paradox only heaven can orchestrate. The world may call it confusion, but the Spirit calls it consecration. You're not being delayed, you're being designed. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. Every discomfort is a doorway. Every silence is a sanctuary. Every burden is a blueprint. And every ounce of peace is a prophecy. This journey is not for the casual believer. It's for the chosen. The ones who don't just want breakthrough. They want obedience. The ones who don't just chase opportunity. They wait for assignment. The ones who don't just seek clarity. They crave consecration. You've learned that divine elevation doesn't come through speed. It comes through surrender. And surrender is not weakness. It's warfare. It's the kind of warfare that doesn't fight for control, but yields to the whisper. That whisper is your compass. That whisper is your confirmation. That whisper is your calling. C.S. Lewis taught us that the soul was made for eternal realities. And when God is preparing to entrust you with something eternal, He doesn't rush. He refines. He removes what's unnecessary. He rewires your desires. He reorders your steps. And in that process, you begin to crave silence over noise, solitude over spotlight, obedience over optics. You stop asking, when will it happen? And start asking, who am I becoming? Because you know that the gift is not the goal. The transformation. You've walked through disruption and didn't lose your faith. You've been stripped and didn't lose your identity. You've craved silence and found clarity. You've carried burdens and discovered purpose. And through it all, you've felt a peace that made no sense, but made you whole. That's the evidence. That's the sign. That's the preparation. Because what's coming is not just big, it's holy. And holiness requires readiness. So when the door finally opens, you won't slip through it. You'll carry the weight of it with wisdom. You won't just receive the blessing. You'll steward it with reverence. You won't just arrive, you'll be anointed. Because you didn't rush, you didn't compromise, you didn't settle, you followed God's. Period. To every soul who listened, wrestled, and resonated, thank you. Thank you for honoring the tension between calling and timing. Thank you for choosing obedience when urgency screamed louder. Thank you for trusting the whisper when the world demanded noise. Your surrender is sacred. Your silence is strategic. Your story is not delayed. It's being divinely written. May you continue to walk slowly, speak boldly, and wait faithfully. May your life preach before your lips do. And may your obedience unlock doors no man can shut. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being prepared for something eternal. Thank you for walking this journey with reverence, with fire, and with faith. The best is not just coming, it's being formed in you.